Before we proceed with the items on the agenda, I need to give you a quick reminder about the few housekeeping messages. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the chamber by the nearest door, then follow the illuminated exit signs and assemble in the car park at the rear of the building. Also, would you all please ensure that your phones and tablet devices are in silent mode? Thank you. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have so far been received from Councillors Holden and Matthew Vincent. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Moon.
Councillor Ballard, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ballard. Are there any more? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes. Can I please have a proposal that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 11th of July 2019 be approved as a correct record?
Move those minutes, Madam Mayor.
Is there a seconder for that proposal?
Happy to second it, Madam Mayor.
Does anyone want to comment on the factual accuracy of the minutes or propose an amendment? No? Would those members present at the 11th of July meeting who are in favour of confirming the minutes as a correct record, please indicate. Those against? Any abstentions? The minutes are confirmed. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do any members or officers have any interest to declare on any items in the agenda? Mark Billington, Mark Broadhurst and Marion Hesketh. Yeah.
I could declare a pecuniary interest in item number 15, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mark Billington.
I declare pecuniary interest in item number 15, Madam Mayor, and will leave the chamber at the end of item 14.
Thank you. And Marianne Hesketh.
I also have a pecuniary interest in agenda item number 15 and will leave the chamber after item 14.
Thank you very much. The next item is announcements. I have one procedural announcement and 4 Mayor's charity announcements this evening. The procedural announcement relates to the order of business. The report submitted under agenda item 9 on the appointment of honorary aldermen has been withdrawn. The proposals will be considered further at a future meeting. Moving swiftly on to the charity events, I would first of all like to thank all those who attended the Capricorn concert last night. It was a great success. I'm pleased to announce that I, along with the Mayoress and my deputies, successfully completed the Wyre Walk Challenge at the beginning of September. We did the whole walk in 3 days. The first 2 days were glorious weather. We had terrific support from the officers who came with us, particularly Duncan Byrne. We promoted the tramper. My Lady Mayoress rode the tramper. We carried buckets, and I have to say, if I never see another collection bucket as long as I live, it will be soon enough. But it was well worth it. On the 3rd day, we were soaked to the skin. We did get up to Nicky Nook. We did have the benefit of having an outdoor picnic under an awning at the barn in Scorton. And if you think we suffered and it would make you increase your donations, I will be most grateful. I'm very grateful to those people who've already donated, and I can't let this opportunity pass without passing this round. If you have already donated, would you please sign again and tick that you've already donated? If I start at this end with Councillor Michael Vincent, I'll make sure it goes past everybody. Everyone gets a chance to see it and sign, please. Finally, if you would like to see... No coins. I'm getting lots of advice here. No coins. I'll have anything. I'm not proud. And if you've looked on the website, our chief exec came to wave us off. And he did proffer a £20 note. But
Excuse me.
no, I know. Just wait. A £20 note, but we had 2 buckets on each side. So we stood there, very patiently waiting while he went into this wallet. The moths flew out, and we got another tenner. So he was extremely generous and gave us £30 to start our collection. So thank you, Gary.
Took 29 out, wasn't
He didn't. It was padlocked. Thank you, Mark. Tickets at £12 each are now available for the Northern Festival of Remembrance at the Marine Hall on Saturday the 9th of November at 7 o'clock in aid of the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal. I will be doing the raffle there, so again, please don't slide past anybody selling raffle tickets. That's the donation I get to my charities from the raffle. The sale of tickets is all organised by John Shedwick for his charity or event, whatever he's putting it up for, the forces, I'm not sure, but I get the raffle. Finally, I think anybody who's not seen these people will be delighted. I've got been very fortunate in getting a lady called Helen Harrison, who conducts 4 national orchestras, and she's going to come to Hodgson School and bring the Lancashire Youth Orchestra and a brass band on Sunday afternoon in December the 8th. It will be a marvellous event because they are celebrating 150 years as well as us celebrating the mayoral year. She has invited me to several other concerts as mayor, and they've all been wonderful with the Blackpool Symphony Orchestra. So I'm so pleased she offered to do one for me and bring all the Lancashire youth. So everybody's invited to that. It will be advertised in due course, and I would greatly appreciate your support. There will, of course, be the inevitable raffle there if I can scrounge any more unwanted gifts from you. So will you make a note of that, please? Thank you very much. If there are no other announcements from me, which there aren't, I'm reading what's written here. I have no other announcements. So the next item on the agenda is public questions and statements. I think we can move very swiftly on again. There's no such public questions or statements being submitted. So the next item is notice from councillors. Again, no such questions have been submitted. So we'll move now to the business of the meeting, the executive reports. Firstly, Leader, I'd like to ask you to submit your report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report's before everybody. I've nothing to add. I've just been put into absolute shock now. Apparently I've got to sign this and cough up some money as well.
It's all right, we'll get somebody for first aid. Councillor Fail. Would you like to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In para 4.7 of your report, you refer to a Brexit risk register and action plan that has been put together. The management of risks and issues for Wyre may not be on the same scale as the risks highlighted in the Yellowhammer papers, but with Boris Johnson recklessly pushing the country towards the cliff edge, there is a need for Wyre to be prepared not only for a potentially orderly withdrawal from the EU, but also a disorderly and chaotic withdrawal from the EU as a result of a no-deal scenario. It's become evident why the Tory party are so keen to drive us to that disorder and chaos on the 31st of October. It's the rich Tory backers gambling their billions on share prices falling and the pound plummeting. Who'd have thought it? Bullingdon boy Boris doing the bidding of the 1% self-appointed elite rather than looking out for the interests of the 99%. Well, bumbling Boris might not care what happens to ordinary people, but the Labour Party do. So can I ask the Leader of the Council what his thoughts are on how well prepared Wyre is for leaving the EU, and also ask what contingency plans are in place for a no-deal Brexit economic shock? And in the interests of openness and transparency, can I request that Wyre's Brexit Risk Register and Action Plan is not only made available to all councillors, but is made visible to the public as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fail. Are there any other questions?
It's one by one.
Councillor Henderson, do you want to respond to that one?
I'll partially respond to it, Madam Mayor. We are Wyre Council. We do deal with local things within Wyre. We don't deal nationally. I'm not going to comment on any national issue whatsoever. I'm not going to answer any accusations having a go at the current Prime Minister. And if Councillor Fail wishes to know just how well ready we are, he can email Marion Hesketh, our lead officer for Brexit, and she will give him all the details. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Swales.
Regarding the intended electric vehicles, are the council using the 16 charging points, or are they intending to use their own dedicated ones, like at Copse Road or the Civic?
Councillor Henderson.
That's a very good question, is that one, to be perfectly honest. At the moment, we have not, as far as I'm aware, purchased any electric vehicles. I am sure that when we do so, that those vehicles will be charged overnight, more than likely at the Copse Road depot, for business the following day.
Some of the points I was going to make have already been raised by Councillor Fail. So it was just basically about contingency preparations for an economic shock from Brexit, especially a no-deal Brexit. Councillor Vincent may think this is speculative, but many UK economists have warned of possible dire economic consequences which could impact the council in areas including inflation, the cost of goods and services and rising homelessness.
Was there a question there, Madam Mayor?
What contingency preparations have the council considered for any economic shock from Brexit?
Maybe you'd like to put that question to Councillor Alan Vincent when he gives his report.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any more questions on the Leader's report? Would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Reports in front of councillors. If there are any questions, I will attempt to answer them, speculative or not.
Questions for Councillor Vincent?
It isn't the job of this council to speculate about what the economic impact of a deal Brexit, a no-deal Brexit, or the betrayal of the electorate by withdrawing from the process altogether might be. We are not in a position to make any macroeconomic plans because we are not in the macroeconomic game. What we can do is what we have already done, which is identify any shortages that may be coming, to identify any problems that may arise, and to identify staff who may need help if any of those contingencies happens. But we're not in the macroeconomic game, and nor do we intend to be.
Councillor Bridge, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, apologies for the typo on the fixed penalty notice table, but as you can see, we've rectified it, put one in front of you, the correct numbers. And I'd just like to add my thanks to Councillor David O'Neill, who very kindly donated some paint, etc., to the beautiful back alleys initiative in Fleetwood. Thank you for helping your community going that extra step. Any questions?
Any questions on Councillor Bridge's report? Councillor Sturzaker first, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not a criticism. I'm being kind today. I'd just like to say, could you give my utmost thanks to the street scene operatives, especially Paul and Ian. They recently did well, it's not so recent now, I think it was in August, they did a fantastic job and they were so polite and helpful. I have an autistic son and he was trying to help but not trying to help, and they were absolutely marvellous with him. So I'd just like to give them my thanks.
We have a fantastic team. Excuse me. They are not only very efficient and work very well, but they're nice people. And we're very fortunate to have people like that who work for us and with us. And I'd be delighted to pass that on personally. Okay.
Hi, Councillor Bridge. While it's great to see the restoration work on the Mount is getting underway, I just have a couple of questions. And it's firstly regarding the trees that are currently there that are going to be taken out. Can they be taken out in a humane way so that they can be moved and still prosper in another area? And also, the trees that we're replacing, will they be saplings or will they be mature trees that are bedded in? Just bearing in mind that we're trying to go into, you know, it's carbon neutral. We don't really want to be cutting mature trees down.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bridge, will you respond to that?
Yeah. The trees that are going are pine trees. I mean, I don't know if you know the history of the Mount, but the original idea of it was that you would have 360 degree view from there. That's the whole reason it was built. That's the history of it. I'm sure many of you from Fleetwood will know the grand history of that beautiful, beautiful place. We're trying to restore it to its original purpose and its original grandeur, and I think we're doing quite a good job at the moment, and we're taking great pride in that. The trees that are coming down will just have to come down. They're pine trees. We cannot actually transplant them as such. We're going to be putting it's more shrubbery, etc. But it will be eco-friendly. It'll be friendly for the wildlife, but it won't restrict our views around there, and it will also help with erosion and things like that. So we are very much aware of the sensitivity. We are fully on board with all of the eco advantages and aware of the eco disadvantages of any work that we do. So we're replacing them with not with trees or with saplings, but with more of the shrubbery. But then hopefully we'll get back to the original grandeur of what the Mount was, and hopefully what will be again a real jewel in the crown for Fleetwood.
Councillor Collinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Highly delighted at 3.2 that we are going to recycle pots, tubs and trays. I know this is a bit of a hobby horse I have, isn't it? Because a lot of the things that we do use are in little trays that have never been able to be recycled. And we just throw them into natural waste, and they are a plastic, so they're not going to dissolve for a long, long time. So I'm very pleased about this one, Councillor Bridge. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, come March, when we start literally rolling out the new bins to get rid of the green boxes, we will have extra capacity so that we can recycle even more than we are doing at the moment. All your flower pots.
No more questions, so that concludes the consideration of the report of street scene, parks and open spaces. We will now move on to the report of the Planning and Economic Development Portfolio holder. Councillor Michael Vincent, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite a comprehensive report this time, so I've not really anything to add other than at 5.4, references made to the Town Centre Partnership Board. That board has now had its first meeting. Very productive, very positive about the Future High Streets Fund bid, and we'll be looking to progress that quite quickly but thoroughly.
Ms Wales, would you like to go first, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bourne residents are already concerned by plans for a much larger gas-fired power station. But with regard to Forza Energy Plan, can residents be assured that their concerns will be considered by Wyre Planning Committee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a much smaller project than the one that was previously offered, and it's one that will come to Wyre's planning, so yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not a question, I just want to thank Andrea Wallace came and did a presentation at the Town Council meeting at the last meeting last month on the Future High Streets Fund, and it was a fantastic presentation, very thorough, and it's got the public in Fleetwood extremely excited about it. So can you just pass on my thanks for a fantastic presentation? Thanks.
Councillor Vincent, can you respond, please?
Yeah, thanks for that. I will pass that on, and I would also echo it as well. She's really taken ownership of that project, and it really means, you can tell it means a lot to her. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Vincent, this is in regard to 2 proposed housing developments in close proximity in Carlton and Tithbarn wards. As if the allocation in the local plan for 300 houses in between Carlton and Poulton wasn't enough, apparently we now have an application submitted to build another 330 houses on Blackpool Road opposite Carlton Crematorium. Some would argue that neither the infrastructure in place nor the infrastructure planned as part of the adopted local plan is adequate to cater for even the housing allocation agreed in the local plan. Yet here we are with a bid for 330 houses along the same stretch of road in an area already suffering badly from road congestion. The addition of over 1,000 cars really doesn't bear thinking about. Seemingly, we have no highway limitations, according to some, but folk who actually live here recognise the daily problems, and we will be wondering just why a council agreed allocation SA1/6 for 300 houses in central Carlton and at the same time redesignated the land opposite Carlton Crematorium as white land rather than green belt. Not only does this allow the white land to be developed, any such development would then reduce the necessary separation between Carlton and Blackpool. So I'd like to ask Councillor Vincent his overall view of the 2 proposed housing developments, and specifically whether he believes each planning application will have to take each other into consideration with regard to the overall impact on infrastructure, or whether these will be treated separately and the overall impact quietly brushed under the carpet. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, if he doesn't read the Gazette, then that might be a genuine question, but if he does, then he'll already know my answer to this question. So essentially, I'll start first with the reallocation of the land from Greenbelt to White Land, and the reason for that was that the planning inspector told us that it wasn't Greenbelt land. It does not qualify as Greenbelt land. For all the government say they don't want to build on Greenbelt land, they don't. They just want to narrow the definition of what Greenbelt is. Greenbelt is a strip of land that looks like a belt, that's why it's called that, between 2 towns. Poulton is 1 town, according to the National Planning Inspector, so it's not Greenbelt. So that just deals with that. Do I agree with it? No, didn't agree with it at the time. But we're dealing with planning law and the National Planning Inspectorate. I remind members of the planning Wild West we faced before we adopted the local plan. There was application after application which we had no control over. The local plan was something we had to just get done. We don't like bits of it. Most of us who've got it in their wards, I had to stand on an election a few weeks having basically put my name to the local plan, and it wasn't particularly fun. However, I did so and I supported it because it was in the best interest of the whole borough. The local plan site, when LCC were consulted about the highways evidence, they said in pretty strong terms that they didn't think the infrastructure could cope with it. They said about 100 houses. We put about 100 houses in our first draft of the local plan. The National Planning Inspector then got involved and basically told us that the infrastructure can cope with 300 houses because people who live in Poulton won't have cars, they'll just walk into Poulton. They'll all work in Poulton or they'll get on the train. It's just staggering. There is no, it does not show any sort of resemblance with what we all know to be the reality. However, if we wanted a local plan, we had to stomach it. Councillor Fail may or may not be aware that Storey Homes have ignored the requirements to master plan, as have Applethwaite Homes, and put in an application for the local plan site. LCC's response to those planning applications is already the highways can't cope with it. Therefore, when it comes to an application from Blackpool Council, as we have already predetermined 300 houses in the local plan, LCC will have to consider the fact that it won't just be 300 houses, it will be 630. Because when the master plan goes and is consulted on and it's already approved at national level, they won't have a lot of choice but to go along with that. But the Blackpool site, as you may have seen in the Gazette, I am opposed to. The roads cannot cope with it. Poulton cannot cope with it. Carlton cannot cope with it. We do not need that complete change to the area that I represent and many people live, and I'm on record as saying I'll fight it and I'll do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just ask, does the anticipated collapse of Marcus Worthington have any implications for the council in any way?
Not so far as I am aware, but I could get a more comprehensive answer. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before introducing my report, I'd just like to have a few words about the flooding that has occurred. Heavy rainfall over last weekend led to widespread areas of the borough being affected by flooding. The rainfall was accompanied by exceptionally high tides along the coastline and up long stretches of the River Wyre, which made it more difficult for the rainfall to drain down the river. Fortunately, riverbanks seem to have held, but we came extremely close to the Wyre overtopping at St Michael's. There was, however, widespread surface water flooding to the highways, and a number of properties, probably not exceeding 6, were flooded internally by runoff, including Sunnyside Terrace area in Preesall and Carr Lane in Hambleton. We will want to address any issues which have been raised, and a meeting has already been called for Monday, when our officers will meet with the Environment Agency, United Utilities and Lancashire County Council. Finally, I would like to thank our officers for the help and assistance they've given to our residents over the weekend and the past few days. Other than that, I'd like to introduce my report, and I'll do my best to answering any inquiries.
Councillor Berry, are there any questions or comments for the portfolio holder? Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to the weekend flooding, I just wanted to relay my observations and ask a couple of questions in the hope that there is an improved performance across all stakeholders next time. Having received reports of flooding on a number of Jubilee streets on Sunday morning, my first port of call was to check Wyre's and LCC's website. I have to say what a disappointment that was. LCC's website astonishingly advertises that their hotline telephone number is only for weekdays between 8 and 5. Outside those times, they expect you to ring the police on 101. That might be just about acceptable if you could get a response, which I couldn't. From a Wyre perspective, the website states that during a flooding incident, regular updates will be posted to the homepage of the council website. There were none. The Flood Task Group recommendation 4 states that a system be put in place to ensure that ward councillors are provided with all essential information about flooding events in a timely fashion. This didn't happen. Although there was some valid criticism of action taken on the day, in my mind, the key to improved action during a flood is learning from previous floods. And to that end, I have to ask the question again: has LCC's report on the 2017 floods been produced and published? If this report is still outstanding, it would seem reasonable for Wyre to once again press for this. That report should have been out in early 2018, in my view, not 2 years later. And although actions may or may not have improved, from the public's perspective, there simply is no visibility. It's just not good enough. It's accepted the rainfall was significant, but when the water started to recede, pools of water still surrounded many grids. It's fairly clear LCC urgently address any blockages at all flood locations. With lots of mixed messages flying around, partially due to there being no definitive statement on Wyre's website, the issue of sandbag provision needs resolving. On Tuesday, the floodwaters were muddied further, with a Wyre spokesperson apparently telling the Gazette the council does not supply sandbags to individuals. This was a little baffling because Cabinet rejected the Conservative members of the Flood Task Group's recommendation that the Council stops providing sandbags. So can I ask, has a decision been made behind closed doors to go back on that rejection? Managing expectations is really important, so on a final note, are you able to provide a definitive statement as to whether pumps were employed before, during or after high tide? And if only after high tide, why was that the case? Thank you.
Yeah, there are.
Would you respond?
Yeah, sure. First of all, dealing with LCC, I understand that their report has now been published. They do regularly sort of attend to our roads, the drains and grids. They have a scheme of cleaning those that's regular. I think we do quite well in Wyre in getting them to do so after pressure that we've put up. If any property is threatened, there is an ingress of water. They can, of course, and the life is at risk or there is danger of injury to people, they can, of course, ring the emergency services on 999. That's always been available, whereas a threat to life or somebody could be injured. Yes, the things happened on Sunday. I do know that I personally informed councillors who were directly involved with flooding that were threatened. There were flood alerts and flood warnings issued by the Met Office, and I followed those up myself on Sunday morning by informing the councillors in all those areas where those flood warnings were operating. So as far as I was concerned, I did inform those councillors in those areas that there possibly could be flooding in those areas. Now, I know it's a bit more difficult with surface water to know exactly where it's happening, and I think it's important that we send out not a generic message in those cases, but something very specific. Now, I didn't get any specific mentions at the time about road flooding. I think it was fairly apparent from everybody who went out that there was flooding in all areas. It was inevitable because of the fact that in the last 3 days, the Friday, the Saturday and the Sunday, a total of at least 66 millimetres of rainfall fell, and it's inevitable that we do get surface water gathering in certain areas. That is inevitable. Whatever best scheme of operations that we have, we've got to face the facts that those things will occur. And as I said in my introduction, we do have the issue and problem of the River Wyre. Everyone drains into the River Wyre, and if we have a high tide occurring at the same time, it does hold up some flood waters getting into the system, and we've just got to live with that. As far as I'm concerned, pumps did work. So I've no information to say that they didn't. I've no information at this time. Whether that's right or wrong, obviously, we'll find out because we need a full debrief, which we'll get, as I said, on Monday. As regards sandbags, there is a leaflet outside there about sandbags and what our policy actually is. We do not issue sandbags, and we cannot issue sandbags to members of the public. What we do have decided to do is that we will issue sandbags to flood action groups so that they can look at the areas which they feel need protecting and deal with people who may have disabilities and need protecting. But other than that, I think we need to reserve the right to put sandbags in the positions that we may require. And I think it's a reality that we just cannot supply sandbags to all of the areas of the borough. That is not technically feasible. And in fact, we don't want members of the public on the highways at times of flood trying to collect them. I think it's a big mistake. So we do advise...
Councillor Berry.
We do advise people to make their own protection measures and buy flood precaution equipment.
Thank you. You have overrun a little.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Referring to point 3.3 on housing in Councillor Berry's report, how does the Council accurately measure levels and trends of homelessness in Wyre? What evidence is there that Council strategies are working? And what plans are in place for a possible Brexit-related rise in homelessness?
I think that's a useful question to put to the, we put it out to consultation. Why don't you put that out? I mean, obviously, we now have to operate within I think it's called the 56-day rule, that we do get some sort of advance warning that people may be homeless who are in tenancies. So obviously, once we find out about people who are being threatened, they've received a notice to quit, for want of a better word, or other issues, then we do act. So as soon as that information comes through to us via agencies, we do act on it and try and prevent those people from being homeless, and we do employ various strategies to assist them to either retain their existing tenancy or possibly find something else or sort out their issues and problems.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to thank Councillor Berry and the officers for the work that's been happening regarding the antisocial behaviour. And Councillor Berry took the time to meet with me, and the officers have made sure they've kept me informed with all of the work they've been doing. So could you please pass on my thanks for that?
Do indeed, and we do take ASB very seriously, and we do try and prevent it as best we can. We work with the police and various agencies, and we try and employ as many diversionary activities for young people as we possibly can. And I appreciate the fact that you've taken a great interest in this, and that you will work with, I think it's Sports England or one of the bodies there, to have a particular form of diversionary activities for young people who don't feel that their needs are being covered by sporting activities. So that's great.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. We have time for one more question, Councillor Minto.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question of Councillor Berry ringing round, he did in fact ring me on Sunday morning and inform me of various aspects which I wasn't aware of. However, when it comes to the pumps, we have two pumps at Stanner. One is on demand, that works off a limit switch when the water comes up. The second is a manually operated pump. Now that wasn't switched on till 11:15 in the morning, and that had a massive effect on obviously residual water that was standing. However, due to the fact that the water was standing for such a long period, we got untreated raw sewage mixing in with the top water, and obviously that's going to go into the River Wyre untreated, which is something we can't have. And for Councillor Berry, if he's on this meeting on Monday, can you ask please to sort out this question of pumps on demand, and can you ask them what flow rate these pumps do now, as these pumps are an ageing pump, and obviously the efficiency drops due to age. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really comment because I don't have the information on the issue that you've raised directly about whether they were working or not. I do know that one of our officers did check. That would be part of their routines. You know, when we got some sort of forewarning that we were going to have heavy rainfall, that he did go around and generally check things out. So I'll see how that's operating. I think we'll have to come back to you on that one. But hopefully this will be raised, and we'll make sure it is raised at the meeting on Monday about the pumps.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. That concludes the consideration of the Neighbourhood Services and Community Safety Portfolio Holders Report. The next report is from the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holder. Councillor Bowen, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've only got one thing to update you about, and that's that the recent BBC coverage of the Healthier Fleetwood story continues to show great progress in the health initiative that we have supported from the outset. Our own contributions include Harmon Health, park run, health walks, rides, etc. And these activities in parks and leisure centres have been really well supported. So that's a great news story.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Are there any comments or questions for Councillor Bowen?
No. Councillor Bowen, could you give us some idea how successful the food bank is in Fleetwood? Are we maintaining it? Are they struggling? Could you answer that question, please?
I I haven't any information at all about the food bank in Fleetwood. I think Councillor Vincent is the best person to answer that question.
Claire Listen.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say how good the activities that were on all over the summer at all the different locations where we went to quite a few with our children in the summer holidays at all the different parks, I think, and they were really, really fantastic events, and especially the food and drink event at the Marine Hall. And I think the fact that they're free for families is a really good thing, because there was a lot of positive feedback around them. So thank you for those.
Thanks for that. And the good thing is lots of people that had stalls there this year have already booked for next year, so it's really successful. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? No? That concludes the consideration of the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holders Report, and this is the last of the executive reports this evening. It's now time for the giving the opportunity for members of the Cabinet to make comments or ask questions on the reports of their colleagues. Do any Cabinet members wish to do so? Councillor Michael Vincent.
Thank you, Madam. I have a question for the Leader. Does the Leader agree with me that Labour's new vocal anti-Brexit stance is good for Fleetwood, as it will reduce their Wyre councillors even further?
Well, for an area that I think voted, was it about 74% to leave? Yeah.
Is that answered? Councillor Alan Vincent.
Yep. Could I answer Councillor Birch's question? There are two food banks operating in Fleetwood. One of them is run by the SVP, which is a Catholic charity, and the other is run by the Mustard Seed, which is based in St Peter's Church at the other end of town from where we operate at St Edmund's Church. Both of those are active. The SVP food bank has been going for very many years now, and has seen a reduction, if anything, in the number of food parcels that it gives out. That is probably because they have a set of rules which they stick to, which means that people have to have a genuine reason for wanting a food parcel. And if they have that genuine reason, then they certainly get the food parcel, but they also get follow-up support. So what they're looking to do is not just give away food, it's to find out why they need the food and to try and support them out of that dependency. So that has been successful, and the number of people using that has reduced, but it hasn't gone away. There is still a need for it.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. That concludes the consideration of executive reports. We will now move on to agenda item 8, which is a report on appointments to committees. I've been informed that nominations have been received from party group leaders on the recommendations in the report as follows: that Councillor Collinson be appointed to the Licensing Committee in place of Councillor Swales, that Councillor Fairbanks be appointed to the Audit Committee in place of Councillor George, that Councillor Swales be appointed to the Employment and Appeals Committee in place of Councillor George. The leader of the Labour group has also proposed that Councillor Beavis be appointed to the Councillor Development Group in place of Councillor Swales, that Councillor Swales be appointed to the Standards Committee in place of Councillor Beavis. Copies of the revised recommendations have been circulated around the chamber. Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations on the basis of the nominations received?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to add, just the recommendations there, 3.1 to 3.4. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that proposal? Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When Council last considered appointments to committees, I stated that when the Constitution is fully reviewed, the procedures for determining places is formalised at that point so that it is fair to all councillors and groups. The delay in getting the Constitution reviewed is allowing anomalies in the system to remain. On this occasion, the anomaly created can be seen in the proposal for audit. Calculations indicate Labour should have 2.29 and UKIP 1.14, yet Labour and UKIP both have 2 places. Labour's 2.29 being taken down to 2 and UKIP's 1.14 taken up to 2, a massive 1.15 difference in the calculation. Yet both parties have the same number of places. On the 6 main committees, Labour are due 11.76 places, but are actually getting 11 places. The 0.76 effectively being used to fund a place on 2 committees, senior appointments and senior disciplinary. Given the infrequency of senior appointments and disciplinary committee meetings, there is a clear case for reviewing the established methodology with meeting frequency taken into account, or for senior appointments and disciplinary committee places to be dealt with separate to the 6 main committees. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, Councillor Fales' faux outrage at the mathematically sound calculations provided by the Council's Section 151 officer and Head of Finance is a somewhat transparent attempt to divert attention away from the reason this report is necessary. With the resignation of Councillor George, he became statistically the worst leader of any group on this council that I and many colleagues can remember. He has overseen the resignation of 3 councillors during his reasonably brief tenure, and there is time yet for Happy, Sneezy or Grumpy to follow Councillor George's lead. He has also shattered the record for overseeing the shortest period between a new member being elected and resigning a party whip. The records just keep on coming. The report is, as I say, an accurate reflection of the reality. Labour numbers are dwindling as a percentage of this council, and long may it continue.
Does anyone else wish to ask a question or make a comment at this juncture? In that case, Councillor Henderson, as the proposed... In this case, Councillor Henderson, as the proposer of the recommendation, would you please respond to the debate?
Well, yes, I think Councillor Michael Vincent actually said it all, but it does remind me of my meetings at the Lancashire Leaders meetings, where the majority of the districts in Lancashire at the May elections, Labour lost seats, and a lot of independents or UKIPs came in. Yet every time we discuss appointments to committees, it's never good enough for Labour. They can't seem to work out. They've lost members, therefore they're going to lose seats. It's as simple as that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That concludes the debate. Thank you. Councillor Henderson. Would members please now vote on the recommendation? Those in favour, please show. Those against? Any abstentions? The recommendations are approved. As I mentioned at the start of the meeting, agenda item 9 has been withdrawn. So the next item is the periodic report by the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Ibison, would you please introduce your report?
The report is in front of Council. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions for Councillor Ibison? You will have a chance to respond when all the comments have been made and the questions have all been asked. Next item is about a revised statement of the Council's gambling policy. Councillor Bowen, would you introduce the report and propose the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This policy is to refresh and review as required by the which is required by the Gambling Act every 3 years. And the aim of the policy is to prevent gambling from being a source of crime or disorder, being associated with crime or disorder, or being used to support crime. ensuring that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way, protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. At present, the licensing team received very few complaints about gambling in Wyre, and there's been none in the last 12 months. All gambling licences granted to establishments who wish to offer gambling activities will be licensed in accordance with this policy. There are no new major policy considerations or expectations introduced. However, the policy has been updated to reflect the most recent guidance received from the Gambling Commission and a request from the Director of Public Health to include a reference to local vulnerability and risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Is there a seconder for the proposal?
Happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
None? Immediately to the vote. Would members please vote now on the recommendation? Those in favour, please. My statement of gambling policy 2019 to 2021 is approved. Next item is the periodic report on the Lancashire Business Rates Pool. Councillor Henderson, will you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've only got one comment to make, and that is on the recommendations. You see in 3.1 that there was a meeting to be held on the 26th of September. That meeting has now taken place, and all the authorities agreed unanimously to contribute. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder for Are there any questions, comments or amendments? None? That concludes the debate, and will members now please vote on the recommendation. Those in favour, please show. Unanimous, so we can move on, please. The recommendations are approved. The Climate Change Policy Group. I've been informed that nominations for places on the proposed new policy group have been received from the Labour and UKIP groups and have been received as follows. Labour, Councillor Fail Cleavelys and Councillor Armstrong Fleetwood. UKIP, Councillor Gerard Fleetwood. Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations on the basis of the above nominations and the nominations of the Conservative group, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the report is before members. I'd just like to outline this. The Climate Change Policy Group, this was decided at Management Board, as we've been discussing climate change for quite a long time. And we looked at the local plan policy group as well. We used that as an absolute basis and decided to form a climate change policy group as opposed to having a task and finish group, which I don't think would do it justice whatsoever. The Climate Change Policy Group will sit as a group approximately 4 times a year, or have more meetings should they wish to, and they will then bring back any ideas to officers and to the Cabinet. I should also like to add, Madam Mayor, as well, that at Lancashire District Leaders, my fellow authorities, quite a few of them haven't even done the climate change as we did at the last meeting, and they have sought guidance from Wyre on what we have done so far. So I take that as a great compliment to Wyre Authority that we're taking a lead on this throughout Lancashire. The nominations for the Conservative group are Councillors Sir Robert Atkins, Andrew Cropper, Johnny Leach, Julie Robinson, David Walmsley, Paul Ellison, Leslie Mackay, Peter Cartridge and Tom Ingham. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Is there a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Vincent. Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Thank you, Sir Robert Atkin.
Madam Mayor, can I congratulate Councillor Henderson and the Cabinet for coming up with this idea? It seems to me to be an excellent one, which should follow on from what we discussed at the last meeting. And if I may say so, in the spirit of cooperation in this respect, I want to thank the Councillor Fail and the Labour Group for tabling the motion last council meeting, which we considered at some length, and which we all agreed with as far as we could possibly do so. But given the amount of interest in this area at the moment, and given the amount of different opinions, it would seem that we would, when we set this group up, that we need to understand that there will be differences of opinion. There will be some aspects of it with which we disagree or agree, but that overall the objective is one that we should welcome and one that we should proceed with. So I'd like to congratulate Councillor Henderson and his team on the initiative, particularly hearing, as we've done tonight, that we are one of the leaders in this respect in the county. And in that respect, we deserve congratulation all round. And I welcome this initiative very warmly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the Labour Group's initiative for Wyre to declare a climate change emergency, the Labour Group is obviously very supportive of the setting up of a climate change group. Can I make one observation, though, please? To enable progress to be accurately measured and decision-making to be more informed, it is essential that Wyre has a reliable baseline of carbon emissions. Can I ask that any work in obtaining that reliable baseline commences now, so that the new climate change policy group can move forward on a firm footing? Thank you.
Comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Fail, yes, thank you for that. That's noted. And I'm sure that as you're one of the group, you will be making sure that that's brought up at the climate change group. And I know I can leave that in your hands to do that.
Start ball rolling now, though. That would help. That was my point. Sorry.
Okay, fine. Don't accept my thank you very much indeed then, like that. It's entirely up to yourself.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. That concludes... Oh, God. David, have you finished? Sorry. Concludes the debate. Would members please vote now on the recommendation? Those in favour, please show. The recommendations are therefore approved. The next item is on a single-use plastics policy. Councillor Henderson, would you introduce the report and propose the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This follows on from the previous one, single-use plastics policy. The officers, along with the management board group, have been looking at this for some time. You will notice just a very easy one is at the water fountains. There are no more plastic cups on there. We continue to look at very sensible, easy things that we can do within the council offices all the way through the borough. So the purpose of the report there, Madam Mayor, is 3.1 to 3.8. Those are the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Is there a seconder for the proposal? Thank you, Councillor. In that case, the debate is concluded. We'll go straight to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Thank you. That's approved as it's unanimous. The next item is the periodic report. Oh, that's not my fault. That shouldn't have been there. The next item is the report on the corporate management team structure. Councillor Henderson, would you introduce the report and propose the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a fairly lengthy report. It's before members. I hope they have read it. This underpins Wyre Council are always trying to seek the best for the council, to continue with the way that we try to grow, and working on the basis of, and one that I always look to myself, is bringing in people at the base level and then seeking them to move up to the top levels. The reports before members, recommendations 3.1 to 3.5. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the proposal? Please. Members, those in favour of the recommendation? We're down to notice of. That concludes the business for this evening. The meeting is closed. Thank you very much for attending and safe journey home. Hand me your money on your way out. I've got a little bag here. Thank you.
Quick. What's longer in mind?